Welcome, everybody, to the Sonship Sports Channel. We're here at the ATG, all things Gridiron. Casey and I are here to take you through the NFC North preview as promised. So welcome, Casey. How you doing, brother?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Oh, hanging in there. Getting ready. Happy training camp day.
Right.
The 18th of July is the day that all the rookies report. And within the week, we're supposed to have all the veterans, and then we'll have 32 training camps going, and our division previews will probably get a little more accurate after that once we start seeing what's going on in the camps with all the rookies and new players on every team.
And undoubtedly some big name is going to get hurt.
Yeah, some big name's going to get hurt. There's going to be lots of players on each team that we think are already penciled in as starters that are going to get cut, and then they're going to end up with some other team. So basically everything we're telling you right now today is going to end up being wrong. No, I'm kidding.
Subject to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, here's how we're going to do this, guys. The NFC North preview, obviously we got the Bears, the Lions, the Packers, the Vikings. We're going to talk about their position groups. We're going to talk about their coaching staffs, kind of give them a letter grade. Casey and I see things differently on some things. There are things that we see them the same on, but one thing's for sure, it's going to be fun. We'll talk about some things. Smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. At the very least, leave us a comment so you can let us know how you think we're doing, and we'll go on from there. But let's start off right off the bat with the quarterback room. Kind of my take on that. I think, I know it's not necessarily the popular pick, the sexy pick, but I think the best of the group is probably Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's done it now for several years. He's had some good weapons to throw to, but he's consistent. I think in a previous conversation, that's what you said. You thought Kirk was just really consistent. I think that next I would probably have to say, in all fairness, Jared Goff would be the second tier. I would probably put him a letter grade below Kirk because he hasn't done it as much. And then the bottom two, Jordan Love and Justin Fields. I mean, Justin Fields is the second-year guy, but he's been on the field more than Jordan Love has. But Justin Fields last year, was a bad offensive line. He didn't have a lot of weapons. But a lot of people use terms like dumpster fire and train wreck. So, and Jordan Love, there's too many questions. Is he the guy that we saw against the Kansas City Chiefs who couldn't beat a zero blitz? Or is he the guy who drove it down the field against the NFC representatives in the Super Bowl, the Philadelphia Eagles, and scored a touchdown? If he's the Philadelphia Eagles version of Jordan Love, then I think Green Bay is going to be fine. If he's the Kansas City Chiefs version, it's going to be a long couple of years. So what's your take on the quarterback situation?
I agree with you across the board there. I think Kirk Cousins is a proven commodity. He may not be the flashy, pick for a division-leading quarterback, but he's going to be consistent. You're going to get 4,000 yards. You're going to get 35-plus touchdowns. He does have incredible weapons. KJ Osborne, JJ. I mean, what more can you say? I think they do take a little bit of a hit losing Dalvin Cook, but what we've seen from Madison over the last couple seasons, it doesn't really look like it's going to be too much of a drop off. But you can never have too many good running backs, and they're both good pass catchers. So coming out of the backfield, that's just going to pad his stats even more.
Right. If you're looking at your screen right now, I went ahead and threw up the Minnesota Vikings current depth chart. And they do. I mean, if you look on the offensive side of the ball, yeah, they don't have Dalvin Cook anymore, but they've got Madison there. And Kirk Cousins has been the catalyst of this for a few years now. So as many knocks as people give him, I don't think Kirk Cousins is anywhere near as bad as what a lot of people may believe. But I also, I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback in the league either. But for right now, I think he's the best that the NFC North has.
No doubt about it.
All right. Well, the next thing I want to kind of talk about is the running back room. And there were a lot of changes for every single team except the Green Bay Packers. And I'll go ahead and start with the Green Bay Packers because I think the Green Bay Packers probably have the best / most consistent running back room of this group. And quite frankly, I don't think it's really arguably close. I mean, you have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in the backfield for Green Bay. Aaron Jones is one of the best all-purpose backs in the NFL. He can be
underrated.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are so many top 10 lists by the experts that don't have Aaron Jones on there. And he has some ridiculous numbers over the last 4 years that you would put up against just about anybody's numbers in history over a 4-year stretch as far as all-purpose backs go. So I think a lot of it got overshadowed by the fact that he's largely played with Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback. So when you have that level of quarterback play, a lot of people don't give you the credit you deserve because they figure, well, everybody's playing against the pass, so they're backing off. So, Aaron Jones doesn't have to make a cut until he's 5 yards into his run. So, I don't think he gets that. Now, and then they, this is the newer version of Thunder and Lightning, A.J. Dillon. He's got a great average yards per carry. Very difficult to bring down with an arm tackle. He's 250 pounds. They call him Quadzilla. I think that Green Bay has the best running back room in the division. Next, I would probably go with the Detroit Lions. Detroit made some moves this offseason, and I'm going to throw their depth chart up on the screen for just a minute here, so everybody can kind of take a look where they're at. But, I mean, as you can see, they picked up David Montgomery from the Chicago Bears, and then they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs from the Alabama Crimson Tide with in a first round. So that's going to be a nice 1-2 punch. I mean, there's no way around that. Jared Goff is going to have a couple of nice options in the backfield, but I don't think that they're Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, or at least they haven't been doing it as long. So there's some question marks, but there's still a lot of talent there.
I actually think their running back duo from last year was more of a compliment to their team in the way that Green Bay has Jones and Dillon, and they chose to get rid of both of them. So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, Paul Williams is gone too. Yeah,
down in New Orleans now.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I think last year's running back room was probably a little bit better than this year's running back room for Detroit. But this year's running back room isn't what I would call bad by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's still a relatively good one. And obviously the wild card is Jahmyr Gibbs. They spent, anytime you spend a first round draft pick on a running back these days. I mean, Aaron Jones was what, 5th round out of UTEP? So, this old adage, and I know right now you got a lot of running backs in the NFL that are complaining about not getting paid. I mean, you're seeing that all over the place. But when you look at somebody like Aaron Jones, who Green Bay found in the 5th round out of UTEP, and now he's, in at least in my estimation, a top 5 running back in the NFL, it's going to be very difficult for a lot of these cats to get the bag. Aaron got the bag. Aaron Jones got the bag with Green Bay a year or so ago. But I think guys like Ezekiel Elliott and Todd Gurley kind of ruined it for everybody else when it, they get the bag, and then all of a sudden their production falls off a cliff, which happens so often with running backs. They take such a pounding that it doesn't go gradually. It's literally off a cliff. So
exactly.
But they spent a first-round pick on Gibbs, and Gibbs was a very, very good running back for a lot of years for Georgia Tech, and then went to Alabama for his final season in college football. And he's, I mean, if he's as advertised, then he could be something special. Moving on to the Chicago Bears, I would have them probably as my third, with Herbert and Foreman. Obviously, when you look at, Foreman's he's the thunder of the two, 6 foot, 235 pounds. And then Herbert's the smaller guy. He's 5'9", just over 210. So they almost every team nowadays is doing their version of thunder and lightning, or at least having two backs that are serviceable, because if someone gets hurt, you can't have nothing behind him. So, I would probably give Green Bay an A. I would give Detroit, maybe probably a high B, and then and then Chicago, in my estimation, would probably be a lower B, maybe even a C. Then you get to Minnesota. I have them with the lowest grade. Probably a solid C if you're putting letter grades on these. And I think the reason for that is because Alexander Mattison hasn't gotten quite the touches that you would want to see out of a starting running back because of Dalvin Cook. I mean, Dalvin Cook's been one of the best in the business now for several years. And even though I think Mattison is a good changeup back for him, you don't have the videotape, or at least not as much as what you'd like for him. He's not a small guy. He's 5'11", 215. But he's not an A.J. Dillon or a Dante Foreman or anything like that. So we'll have to see what that looks like in Minnesota. But that could cause some problems, because if you remember when Kirk Cousins did play badly, when was it? It was when Dalvin Cook in the running game didn't get going.
Right. He's to me, he was like he's like a Ryan Tannehill. He kind of needs that play action pass to get his game in the groove, and then once you have to respect the running game, or his at least play action pass, that's when he's going to light you up. He's just going to go up over the top to go to Jefferson or KJ Osborne, or in the past Adam Thielen.
Right.
But I'm going to disagree with you on every team outside of Green Bay.
Okay.
I think that the Bears are taking a huge risk on Foreman. And just by comparison, you say there's not as much film on Mattison as there is on Foreman. They both have around 400 carries in the NFL.
Okay.
They both have a 4-point whatever average. My question is why can't Foreman hang around on any particular team? I mean, he's been on now, 4 teams in 6 years in the NFL? So
that's a great point.
Got,
somebody always beats him out.
Yeah, I mean, so, he seems to have found something in Chicago, maybe. Mm-hmm. But, it could have just been a one-hit wonder in Carolina, because they didn't have Shinola for an offense. I mean, let's be real. Right. They traded away, McCaffrey, and that's all they really had. So,
right.
I don't know. I'm not sold on Foreman. He's definitely going to be given the shot. I mean, the Bears are going to be they should be a running team. That's only going to help their quarterback. It's only going to help their offensive line, which, in my estimation, is a huge question mark, although I did think they drafted well for it. But
sure.
They're young, so that remains to be seen how they're going to gel. I think Minnesota probably has the second best running back group in the division. I like Mattison. I don't think you're going to see too much of a tail, by losing Dalvin Cook. So we'll see, And at Detroit, I don't know. The jury's out. I don't like trying to plug in holes with rookies. I mean, I know you've got to do it, but spending the first rounder on Gibbs, I didn't really think he was a first rounder.
Yeah. You could make that argument. I think Gibbs is a good running back, but I think he's somebody that if they didn't take him, you would have been able to probably find him in the middle of the second round.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't remember where they drafted right now, but I mean, if you really wanted to go running back, you were stepping it up for Robinson. You're going to trade up and get by John Robinson, and that was the end of the story.
Right.
So, we'll see.
Yeah, they actually picked him as high as 12th. I'm looking at it right now. Jahmyr Gibbs was the 12th pick in the draft. I mean, and Bijan Robinson is a special talent, so I'm all on board with picking him where he got picked. But besides him, this was not what you would call, in my estimation, a star-studded running back draft. And for another running back to go as high as 12th, when, let's face it, Detroit's going to want to throw the ball with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and when Jameson Williams gets back and stuff like that. They drafted Sam Laporta. I believe he's the big tight end out of Iowa. They're going to want to air it out. And using a first on Jahmyr Gibbs, to be completely honest, I think if you're going to do that, David Montgomery is sufficient for what you want to do. And you could have used that first catcher. Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but let's move on to the next position group.
Yeah. Just one last thing on the running backs. I like what you said about Foreman. Quite frankly, right now, if you do look at their depth chart, he's not even the top of the Bears depth chart right now. Khalil Herbert is. So
it depends. If you look at ESPN, they've got him as the number one.
As the number one. Okay. Well, I mean, at the very least, you're looking at, in the Bears running back room right now, neither one of those running backs are pulling away from the other one. So, I mean, you're looking at 60-40 at best. So, I mean, I know Green Bay's got a great running back room, and here's my personal opinion. A.J. Dillon is a better running back than either of the running backs in Chicago. I think he's a better running back than either of the running backs in Detroit. And he may be as good of a running back as Madison. So, but Aaron Jones is still so much better than A.J. Dillon, at least in productivity, that, I think that it's difficult to say that there's any other team in the NFC North that has the running back room that Green Bay does. So, as you said, moving right along, we're going to talk about those wide receivers and those tight ends. That was one area where I think the Bears actually did make some strides, but I'll get to them next, because I think that the Minnesota Vikings, and a large part of that is Justin Jefferson. He could be the best wide receiver in football right now. I know there's people say Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp, but any football fan can look at Justin Jefferson and make the argument he might be the best. What's going to make him more dangerous this year is their first round draft pick of Jordan Addison that they drafted out of USC. He was the 23rd pick of the draft. Jordan Addison, if you remember, the year before he went to USC in the transfer portal, he played for the Pitt Panthers, and he was largely considered the best wide receiver in college football. And then he transferred to USC, and now he was kind of he was still a big fish, but now he's a big fish in a big pond, because Lincoln Riley brought that, and he kind of got drowned out a little bit by all the hype around Caleb Williams and stuff. And I think it actually hurt his draft. His draft place this year. I think if he would have come out after his last season at Pitt, I think he would have went higher than 23. Because he right off the bat. Who did they have? They had Adam Thielen before this, and they still have KJ Osborne, and then they got Jalen Reagor and Brandon Powell and Jalen Naylor and some nice pieces back there. But Jefferson, Osborne, and Addison, that's going to be a critical for any secondary. And Green Bay's got a good one, and Detroit's made some upgrades at the secondary position. I don't care who you're talking about. Those three receivers are going to be difficult to guard, especially if Jordan Addison is as advertised.
Right. I mean, Osborne and Jefferson alone are already a problem, and then you include their tight ends, and I mean, that's a good point, because they remember they traded for T.J. Hawkinson from Detroit, and Hawkinson is a very capable tight end, and Josh Oliver right behind him. I love Hawkinson.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why Detroit wanted to trade him, but
yeah. Well, they were younger with Laporta, but Hawkinson is Hawkinson's a stud. He makes that receiving room. And we talked about, I mean, some of this might be why Kirk Cousins is as high on our quarterback board as he is, because, I mean, talk about a kid in a candy store with the weapons that he has. Moving along, I think that now my number 2 and number 3. First of all, I don't think there's a bad group in any of these 4 teams. I think Green Bay probably has the youngest and most untested, but my next group might shock you a little bit. I'm actually going to go with the Bears. I think the Bears, with picking up DJ Moore, was a game changer right there. DJ Moore is a legitimate number 1 threat. And then you have Chase Claypool. If Chase Claypool can be what he was when he played for Pittsburgh, and then you add Darnell Mooney to that, Equanimeous St. Brown is there as a legitimate number 4 wide receiver. That's not a bad receiving room anymore in Chicago.
No, it's not. And then you include Cole Kmet, and I don't know if you want to include Bobby Tunyon or if we even want to bring that up, Trader. But it is a good receiving group. But again, I think a lot of their success and or failure is going to be exactly what you said, and which Claypool are you going to get?
Right. If it's the Claypool from Pittsburgh and Chicago's fixed some of those offensive line woes, and Justin Fields can figure out how to hit water when he falls out of a boat, they're going to be okay. Justin Fields obviously had a very, very putrid, there's no nice way to say it, pass percentage last year. But he was on the run the entire time, because as soon as he snapped that ball, he was running for his life, because that offensive line couldn't stop a Girl Scout troop last year.
No. Now, the one interesting stat from Justin Fields' season last year, one of his best, if not the best, passer rating that he had came against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, isn't it?
I think, to me, he's resembling, and I hate to say it, he likes to run more than pass, which kind of gives you the Michael Vick MO. But my personal opinion, you don't trust an Ohio State quarterback. I just can't do it.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Remember, Joey Burrow did start out at Ohio State, so.
Yes, but he did make his hay
in LSU.
That ring.
Yeah, that might, to this day, in my opinion, that might be the best college football team ever assembled. That Joe Burrow LSU team. I mean, wasn't Justin Jefferson on?
Justin Jefferson,
Jamar Chase. I mean, you want to talk about weapons? Like it's tough to lose when you. I mean, my God, imagine in the NFL today if you had Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson on the same team. Like that should be illegal. That's insane.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next team here. Next on my list, I have the Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown. When Jamison Williams comes back after 6 games and is healthy, and then you add the veteran presence of Marvin Jones, and then I do like their 2nd round draft pick, Sam Laporta. He's going to be a good solid tight end. 245 pounds, 6'4", built like a tight end, comes out of Iowa. So, he's not afraid to block as well as go out and pass. So I think that they have some nice weapons. Amon-Ra St. Brown is, in my opinion, sneakily becoming possibly a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's, what is it, 2nd, 3rd year in the league, and I mean, the he's a beast. I don't know how else to say.
Yeah, he is.
You're a Detroit Lion wide receiver, and you got 100 catches and 1,000 yards, and no offense to Jared Goff, but your quarterback's
Right.
Jared Goff.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, remember, Andre Johnson made Matt Schaub look good for a lot of years. So that can happen at just about any franchise. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, I remember watching Equinemius St. Brown play at Notre Dame, and he was doing extremely well there. Amon-Ra St. Brown went to, I believe, USC, and he has
Correct.
far surpassed his big brother. And his big brother is still on the field a lot. His big brother caught a lot of passes for the Chicago Bears, and before that, played some nice minutes for the Green Bay Packers. But between the two of them, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown is special. I think he has the potential to maybe be the number 2 wide receiver in this division, behind Justin Jefferson. There you go. They're shot across the bow, especially when we're talking about the next team that we're going to bring up here. So the next team that we're going to bring up here, Casey and I are a little partial to, if you haven't noticed some of the stuff in our background. We're going to try to be as objective as we can. But you know what? I wasn't a homer here. I did rate the Packers pass catchers as last in the division. And that's not a knock on their talent as much as it is when you're looking at the Green Bay Packers, their 2 best tight ends are rookies. And then you look at 2 out of their 3 top wide receivers are second-year guys, and that third guy is a rookie. Now, let's talk about some of these guys. Let's go ahead and talk about we'll start with the tight ends first this time. So you got Luke Musgrave, 6'5", 253
Monster.
pounds out of Oregon State. Runs like a deer for as big as he is.
Big mitts, soft hands.
Yeah, absolutely. Then you got Tucker Kraft, 6'5", 259. He's a little more of the more physical blocking, but also at South Dakota State, that kid set some records as far as tight ends go. He was to get him in the 3rd round. I was extremely excited to get Tucker Kraft because he's going to get – both of them are ahead of Josiah DeGuara on the depth chart already. So,
well, I think DeGuara is more of a H-back position now anyways. They don't really want to – he's a good pass catcher, but his blocking, frankly, sucks.
Well, yeah, in matter of fact, from the tight end perspective, but in the University of Cincinnati, Josiah DeGuara played more fullback than he did anything else. So that's kind of something that
I think his best blocking comes when he's got a head full of steam. When he's rolling downhill and he can just line.
No, you're 100% right. Which is, I mean, so maybe Green Bay drafting all these tight ends, shifting DeGuara back down to that fullback role. You get into some of these more bigger goal line sets, and you throw DeGuara in there in front of A.J. Dillon. Now you might have something. You could possibly
gonna make me cry.
Yeah, it reminds me of the old days of John Kuhn and Amon Green.
Well, and let's be honest. You've got I won't say a rookie quarterback, but you've got a very inexperienced quarterback. Taking over after 2 surefire Hall of Fame quarterbacks. So there's a lot to live up to if you're Jordan Love, and if you're trying to make it easy for him to adjust to being a starter in the NFL, the best way to do that is to have a great running game. And now you bring in 2 big tight ends. I mean, they're 6'5". These are not.
They're all
guys,
well over 250 pounds.
Yeah. So you got some big bookends to go along with what's already a very good offensive line, and you've got 1,000-yard rusher in Jones, and if we were to go to a more conservative run-oriented offense instead of a passing offense, I could easily see Dillon and Jones both rushing for 1,800 plus yards.
I think for Green Bay to be successful, they're going to have to do what I mentioned in a previous video. They're going to have to try to change their offense to a little more Tennessee Titanish. And if they do that,
Yep.
they've got some big receivers that Jordan Love can hit and play action. Let's talk about some of them. Obviously, the nuclear one is Christian Watson. Green Bay hopes Christian Watson turns into their version of Justin Jefferson. Physically speaking, I mean, 6'4", 210 pounds, runs in the 4.3 range, just goes up and bullies the ball away from people. When he went on that stretch run last year towards the second half of the season, he was just taking stuff away from people in the end zone like a thief, just going up and ripping it out of your hands like you're smaller than him and he's the bully on the schoolyard.
And that's what it is. I mean, that kid, he has all the tools. You want good hands, got him. You want speed, got him. You want height, got it. You know, you want your let's go ahead and use that buzzword, the catch radius. You want that?
Yes.
Got that too. Just throw it somewhere near me, I'll bring it in. You know, and I think his season got off to obviously the rough start, missing the wide open touchdown, and I think, you know, one that impacted Rodgers trying to throw to him, and I think it even, you know, hit his psyche a little bit. But Romeo Doubs was off to a really good start, couldn't stay healthy. Then, you know, now you're bringing in what is it, Reed from
Jaden Reed from Michigan State. Yeah,
you know, perfect slot receiver. You go back to the 2 tight end set. You know, you got Musgrave and Kraft. Oh man.
Well,
there's a lot of potential for really good pass
sure
catchers.
There are, and you get kind of excited about it too.
It's potential.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know, we just haven't seen it put together. It's just potential.
So looking at these, I mean, you know, people have, and it's unfair to do this, and I say it's unfair to do this because it's unfair to Romeo Doubs to do this. I'm sure you've already heard the, you know, all the little hype phrases that they've been talking about. You know, he makes back shoulder catches in practice like Devontae used to, and he runs great routes, and Romeo Doubs does. He runs extremely good routes. Last year you saw him make some back shoulder catches when Aaron was throwing him the ball. Hopefully Jordan can throw the same pass. But Romeo Doubs, I think, is the best route runner of the group. And then Jaden Reed is lethal. At least he was at Michigan State in the slot and as a kick returner. And we already have a great kick returner in Keyshawn Nixon. So if we now have 2 guys that can run the rock back and scare the hell out of everybody, then Green Bay may be well on their way with that. One more guy that I'm going to mention, 7th round draft pick last year, Samori Toure. Watch out for him. Samori Toure, so far, training camp hasn't started, but in all the other camps, the mini camps and everything like that, he put on 10 pounds of muscle. And they said
that's what he needed.
And they said he looks outstanding. He is beating Green Bay corners, and Green Bay's got some good ones. Samori Toure has had some really, really good moments in practice thus far this year. So, you know, like you said, it's potential. So I have them last. We got to kind of move along here because we're in a little bit of a time constraint. But next on our list is going to be the offensive line. Now, I think the class of this group is Detroit. Green Bay, I don't think, is too far behind them. Minnesota and Chicago are kind of, I don't want to say bottom of the barrel, because I think, Minnesota, I think, went down a little bit. I think Chicago got better. But if I'm talking about the offensive line of the Detroit Lions, you've got 2 guys, their center and their right tackle, that are considered a couple of the best in the business. That's Frank Ragnow and Penei Sewell. Taylor Decker is obviously a very solid left tackle as well, and they're good at the guard positions. The guards are Jonah Jackson and Vitae. So, you know, they've got a legitimate offensive line, and that's maybe another reason why Jared Goff looked as good as he did last year. When you've got 5 guys who can stay healthy and play in cohesion together, it can make an average quarterback look really good if he's got 5 or 6 seconds to stand in the pocket and stay clean. Sure. I think Green Bay, Green Bay's offensive line, in my personal opinion, can be every bit as good as Detroit's as long as they stay healthy. Big Dave Bakhtiari, during that 5 or 6 game winning streak Green Bay went on, had the best pass blocking percentage in football. So for people who don't think Dave Bakhtiari can still be the best pass blocking left tackle in football, check out the last 5 games from last year. Second best offensive lineman, Elgin Jenkins. He can play any position on the offensive line. Lots of depth in Green Bay. Myers, Runyon, Tom, Nyman, Newman. And then another guy that we haven't seen yet because he was suspended in the first year, but the 3rd round draft pick in 2022, Sean Ryan. He's, you don't pick an offensive lineman in the 3rd round if you don't expect him to eventually become a starter. So a lot of depth in Green Bay, a lot of good talent there. Next, when you look at the Minnesota Vikings, they've got some questions. I do like Christian Darrisaw, their left tackle. I like Garrett Bradbury, their center. But then you kind of look at the rest of the offensive line and the depth, and you're not crazy about it. You move to the Bears. I love their 1st round draft pick, Darnell Wright, the man child out of Tennessee, 335 pounds. He's absolutely massive. You got Nate Davis that they picked up from Tennessee. Cody Whitehair at center. Tevin Jenkins, they moved to left guard because of some of these newer guys they picked up. I don't think that the quarterback position in Chicago, when you're looking at Justin Fields, he's not going to be able to use the I don't have any blocking this year as the excuse. It may not be great, but it's going to be way better than it was last year. Justin Fields, with all the receivers that he has, the tight end room that he has now with Kmet and Bobby Tonyan, and now with an improved offensive line, if Justin Fields doesn't have success this year, it's Justin Fields' fault. So that's kind of my take on the offensive 100%. Lines. What do you think, Case?
I think Green Bay's offensive line, I mean, maybe it's just the homer in me, but I feel like you're kind of giving them a little slight. I won't argue too much, but I think it's more like a 1 and a 1A. Sure. I think you could pick either one as your top, and then the other one is, maybe a few points below, but I think they're right there. I would probably give the nod to Green Bay, just like you said, because they have incredible depth.
Yeah, that is true. I think maybe the starting 5 in Detroit might be an edge higher in what you'd call the ratings, but if Detroit loses 2 of their starters,
let's just even say 1. Let's just say they lose.
Oh yeah, that hurts bad because Ragnow's one of the best in the business.
That's done.
I mean.
And he plays with such a mean streak.
Yeah, Ragnow, you can make every argument he might be the best center in football. He's at least in the top 3. So if they lose Ragnow or they lose Penei Sewell, they don't have the depth Green Bay does. If Zach Tom goes down at right tackle, you got Yosh Nijman. If John Runyon Jr. goes down at right guard, you got Royce Newman. If Elgin Jenkins goes down at left guard, you got Sean Ryan. So, and you got a lot of, and then you got guys like Hansen and some of these other cats that have played a lot of snaps for Green Bay. So, I think that Green Bay, from a depth perception, is probably the best offensive line in the division. And when it comes to depth, it's not even really close. So,
no.
Overall, I think offensively, I still think that the Bears are probably the worst in the division. I would,
but
they are on the uptick. I think you might disagree a little bit with. I think the Vikings still have the best. I think the Vikings have the best and most consistent weapons, from quarterback to wide receiver to tight end. And like you said, Madison has played some good ball at running back. And they don't have a bad offensive line. I don't think it's as great as some of those Minnesota Viking lines in the last 10 years, but Minnesota doesn't have a bad offensive line. And like I said, Christian Darrisaw and Garrett Bradbury are extremely good offensive linemen. And I think Minnesota, I would have to give the overall offensive nod to the Minnesota Vikings. Detroit and Green Bay, to me, are right there in the middle. I think Green Bay's obviously got the better running game. Detroit's going to have, offensive line. They're both good. I think right now you'd probably have to give the edge in receivers to Detroit because there's so many question marks with the youth in Green Bay and who's going to be throwing them the football. If Jordan Love is, quote unquote, as advertised, Green Bay is going to be just fine in the pass catching department. If Detroit is led well by Jared Goff, they're going to be just fine as well. So I think Minnesota number one. I think Green Bay and Detroit 2 and 2A, and Chicago's probably an easy fourth, an easy last place. Does that kind of sit where about you think it is, or
no arguments?
All right, well, let's move over here to the defensive side of the ball. There's when you talk about edge rushers, we're going to start with where I think the largest depth in the division is, and this is where you kind of see Green Bay finding players in later rounds. I mean, Kingsley Enagbare is a 5th-round draft pick. Brenton Cox was an undrafted free agent this year. They pick up Justin Hollins, who is a cap casualty from the Rams. And then you got Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary coming back, and you draft Lucas Van Ness. Green Bay could lose 2 or 3 pass rushers and still have 2 good ones. So it's exactly. Let's hope we don't. But, I mean, you legitimately have 6 guys that can rush the passer, Justin Hollins and Brenton Cox being the last 2 on that list. But Justin Hollins played some nice football for Green Bay last year. And Brenton Cox, if he can stay out of trouble, Brenton Cox could have been possibly as high as what I would say a 2nd-round draft pick this year because of everything he did at Georgia and Florida. I mean, he was the best guy on the field in both of those SEC. His freshman year for Georgia, a lot of people don't know this, he had the highest pressure rate of anybody on that team. And as you well know, there's a lot of those Georgia Bulldogs playing on NFL teams right now that won a couple of national championships, and Brenton Cox had the highest pressure rate of that. To put a little bit of that in perspective, you threw a stat out earlier. I'll throw here a stat at you. Brenton Cox averaged over 30% pressure his freshman through his senior year. Lucas Van Ness, who was a consensus 1st-round draft pick. Everybody had him on the board in the 1st round. Lucas Van Ness had a 33 pass rush percentage his last year in college football. The year previous, he was only 16%. So Brenton Cox had a much longer sustained. And by the way, Brenton Cox didn't play against Little Sisters of the Armless. Brenton Cox played in the best division by far in college football. So Brenton Cox played against a lot of left and right tackles that are household names now in the NFL. So if Preston Smith and Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary and Devondre Campbell can keep this kid clean, Brenton Cox could make the 53-man roster and could end up being a good force for Green Bay. The other 3 teams, I'm going to say the other 2. Minnesota and Detroit, in my opinion, each have one really good pass rusher. In Minnesota, it's Donnell Hunter. Marcus Davenport is a nice complementary piece, but he's not Hunter. And then in Detroit, you've got Aiden Hutchinson, who had an incredible rookie year. But besides that, their next best guy is James Houston, 6th-round draft pick in 2022. Then the Bears, you almost can't name them. A couple of guys named Gibson and Walker. The Chicago Bears, I have a funny feeling they may have the worst front 4 in pro football right now. It's just it's a who's who of nobody. So when it comes to the edge rushing room, I think it's Green Bay. Then you got Minnesota and Detroit, a big jump below them, but they each have one really nice guy. And then Chicago, I don't know how they're going to get pressure on anybody this year. What are your thoughts?
I think you could take that, Green Bay and then right down the
Yeah.
board. Pass rushers, D-line, your corners. I think our biggest question mark, when I say our, I mean
Yeah.
Green Bay, is going to be the safeties.
Oh,
and that may be one of Chicago's strongest
sure.
positions.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's a good point. Green Bay's, let's just talk about the secondary. Green Bay's secondary, that's another thing. You have Jair Alexander and Rasul Douglas, who I would say are probably in the top three in formidable defensive back duos. Jair Alexander, I'm going to come out and say it. He might be the best shutdown corner in football because I haven't seen anybody do to Justin Jefferson what Jair Alexander did to him in their second meeting last year. And you can make all the excuses in the world. It was at Green Bay, and Green Bay was fighting for their playoff lives, and Minnesota had already clinched, blah, blah, blah. Jair was...
It boils down to this. It was game 1, zone. Game 2, man.
And we saw what happened. And Keyshawn Nixon had his coming out party with the return for a touchdown. And I mean, I think Green Bay's best 2 games last year were against the Dallas Cowboys and the Minnesota Vikings. 2 very good football teams. So the talent's there. Now, granted, Aaron was throwing the ball.
Right. I was just going to say.
But beyond that, if Jordan Love isn't a horrific drop-off, because let's be honest, Aaron probably had one of his worst statistical years last year. And in that last game of the season, it wasn't our defense, or it wasn't Green Bay's defense.
No.
That, because the Lions didn't put up 42 points on Green Bay in that final game. Aaron and the offense couldn't move the ball. And
it was the first game against Detroit too.
Right.
That was like what, 13-17?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It was rough there. I would still probably say if you look at secondaries, and now you got Eric Stokes coming back, and Eric Stokes is the fastest of them. Then you had Keyshawn Nixon, who has been doing an outstanding job in practice so far as a slot at mini camps and everything like that, as the new slot corner. So you can make an argument that Green Bay still does, and I don't even think it's a far-fetched argument that they are the best secondary in there. You brought up their safeties, so let's talk about that for a second. You got Darnell Savage and Rudy Ford right now penciled in as the 2 starting safeties, and they kind of fought for the same spot last year. They bring in a little bit of help this year, brought in Jonathan Owens from the Houston Texans, who was a starter there, and then you brought in Tavarius Moore from the San Francisco 49ers, who got on the field some, but was more of a special teams guru. And Rich Bisaccia is going to love that, the coach of the assistant head coach and special teams coach of the Green Bay Packers, who I think did an excellent job getting our special teams a little bit turned around last year.
Absolutely.
So when you look at that, I think that Jair Alexander, Rasul Douglas, Eric Stokes, Keyshawn Nixon. And here's the other thing. With Eric Stokes coming back, there's already been whispers in the wind of you could possibly bump Rasul Douglas to free safety and let everybody else fight over the last spot.
That up.
That would solve some of their problems.
That's a great point.
That would solve some of their problems. As far as the other teams in the division, I think the Bears probably have I think the Bears and the Vikings are probably pretty close as far as secondary. I like Tyreek Stevenson, the second-round draft pick for Chicago. I think Tyreek Stevenson is going to get on the field early. Jaylon Johnson, he obviously played extremely well, and you got Kyler Gordon in the nickel position. Over in Minnesota, Evans, Murphy, and then I wasn't crazy about this pick, but we'll see how he does. Mekhi Blackman out of USC in the 3rd round. What's going to help them out the most is Harrison Smith and Bynum at the safety positions. I think that's going to help Minnesota. And I'm sorry I failed to even bring up Eddie Jackson and Jaquan Brisker, who is probably the best, not probably, they are the best safety tandem in the division for the Bears. So I think those two are close. And, even Detroit's not far behind those two. They went out and did a lot to improve their secondary with Mosley and Sutton that they picked up from San Francisco and Pittsburgh, respectively. And then they went out and picked up C.J. Gardner-Johnson from Philadelphia to be their slot corner or the star position. And then they did a good job drafting Brian Branch. I think they need to basically be Gardner Johnson's backup for at least the beginning of the season. But I think you need to find a way to get both of them on the field because their safety room, much like Green Bay, is kind of meh right now. You got Kirby Joseph and Tracy Walker III, which neither one of those are going to strike fear into the hearts of any quarterback. So,
no, and I guess the question is do you put Brian Branch back there at corner, or are you going to play him at safety?
Right. And you can say the same thing about Gardner Johnson. You play Gardner Johnson at corner, or do you put him back at his natural position of safety? You got both of them, and I think they're probably two of your five best or most talented defensive backs. You need to try to get them on the field at the same time.
Right.
All right. Let's talk about roving linebackers. Not the edge rushing kind, just the roving linebackers. Casey, I'm going to kind of let you start this one off. Looking at the linebacker cadre in the NFC North, who do you think is who kind of stands out to you?
Couple names stand. I mean, Chicago's got. I think they've got a good linebacking core, but I think they're selling themselves short on tacklers. I think they're really looking for pass rush, and they got T.J. Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. To me, they're both pass rushers, and then you bring in Sanborn, who I really like. I think that kid's going to make a big leap this year. He could even, I don't know if I hope he does or doesn't, but he could become, a quintessential Chicago Bears linebacker in the he's just I think he's a stud just waiting for his time. I'm not real huge on Tremaine Edwards. It is what it is. He gets pressure, but he's never really been overly impressive to me. TJ Edwards, maybe he'll get better with the fact that now he's got a former teammate playing alongside him. So who knows? Detroit, Jack Campbell, sure. Anzalone, sometimes, some days he's great, sometimes he's just bad.
Yeah.
And I don't know how else to put that.
Well, I think Anzalone is going to lose his job to Malcolm Rodriguez this year because Rodriguez came on strong last year as Anzalone, in my opinion, kind of is declining. Jack Campbell's another one of those guys that I think he's going to be good. He's going to be that quintessential NFC North inside linebacker, Jack Campbell, he just sounds like it. It's just, and he's
and he's an Iowa kid.
He's an Iowa boy, 6'5", 243 pounds. He's going to do what he needs to do to lay the wood on people.
Yep. Then if we move over to Minnesota, like you brought up earlier, they still have Daniil Hunter. Again, he's more of a pass rusher. Troy Reeder sees some time. Asamoah sees some time. Yeah, nothing in Minnesota is making me worried. Harrison Smith scares the crap out of me.
Sure,
and the kid is just cerebral. Yeah. I think he's getting a little older, maybe losing a step.
12th year.
His brain and his smarts are still there.
12th year, but he's still running strong. They have Jordan Hicks as well that they got from Arizona back in 22. So they're again, it's a nice linebacker room in Minnesota, but nothing that jumps off the page. What about your inside linebacker room in Green Bay? What do you think about Campbell and Walker?
Love Devondre Campbell. I think that's very underrated. But it should go down as probably, should go down as one of the better free agent pickups that the Packers have made.
Yes.
Preston, they have him as a linebacker, but let's be real, he's
Yeah,
an edge rusher.
he goes.
Rashawn Gary, same thing. Quay Walker, I really loved him. I thought he had flashes of, I don't want to say brilliance, but of potential for very, very good play. And then he would do some bonehead things and get a 15-yard penalty kick.
Couple of games.
So,
yeah.
Yep, couple of games. So, I don't know what I'm going to get out of him mentally, but physically, all the pieces are there. And then even if you look at like Isaiah McDuffie, who I like, I think he could even step in and not really miss a beat if we had to. But I think our starting middle linebackers are probably the best in the NFC.
Yeah, I was, at least in my opinion, I think they're the what I would call the roving linebackers. So if you're in the natural 3-4 defense, that'd be your 2 inside linebackers. If you're in a 4-3, that would be your 3 off the ball linebackers. I think that when you're talking about those, I think Green Bay is again the class of the division defensively. As long as Joe Barry doesn't screw things up this year, I think just about every place on this defense is loaded. And they may be called on to win some games for Green Bay this year, because if Jordan Love isn't what he's cracked up to be, the Green Bay could still be a 6, 7, 8-win team just based on how talented this defense is, especially if they start out this year playing like they did the last 5 games of last year, and then you add Gary Stokes and Van Ness back into the mix. That could be an extremely lethal defense. But Quay Walker, as far as his physical attributes go, by the way, by the end of the season, I think Quay Walker led the Green Bay Packers in tackles last year. He just again, he's young, he's a kid, and he let his emotions get the best of him in a lot of situations, and ended up throwing temper tantrums going down the tunnel back to the dressing room because he just made some bonehead decisions. But I think he's going to be a little more mature this year. If Devondre Campbell can return to form of what he was 2 years ago when he made the Pro Bowl for the Packers, I think that they have an excellent linebacker room in Green Bay.
And let's not forget that Barry will be fighting for his job.
Yes, he will. I mean, you can't start out the same way this year as you did last year. That soft zone crap is just not going to work. They have the ability. You've got the highest paid cornerback in the history of the NFL, and you're playing zone with him. And I think by the end of last year, I think Matt had a chat with Joe and said, hey, listen, if this defense doesn't become a top 5 defense in this last half of the year, you're gone at the end of the season. And Joe just decided to go, okay, guys, play the way that you need to play. And they went back to playing more man up and everything like that. And you saw what happened when Green Bay, even with Rashawn Gary and Eric Stokes missing, they became a top 5 defense. That's how much talent is on. And then you add Lucas Van Ness, who can be an off the ball edge rusher, or he can move down into the actual meat of the defense line.
He can play.
Yeah,
inside.
Absolutely. He could get in there with Devontae White. He could get in there with Kenny Clark. 3 technique, 5 technique, whatever you want to call it. He's big enough. I mean, my God, when you see Lucas Van Ness with his shirt off, I feel so horrible about myself when I see that. It's like this guy is literally chiseled out of granite. So
he gives them the option of possibly running some 3-4.
Oh, sure, absolutely. With like Wyatt, Clark, and Van Ness in there, all in pass rushing situations, and then he can throw Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith in the edges. Like that could be an absolutely unfair pass rush. And let's not forget, Green Bay has a legitimate big man nose tackle now. I mean, 6'4", 330 pounds of TJ Slayton out of Florida. Surprisingly, 5th rounder, he's come on really well and played good as a nose when Green Bay is in those short yardage situations. Green Bay's gotten gashed in the running game, But it's weird when they get in those goal line situations and they get their big boys in there. Green Bay's done pretty well in goal line stands, and TJ Slaton's a big part of that. So I think that, when you're looking at D lines, the big uglies, as they say, I think that if I'm looking at it, I would probably say Green Bay has the edge. Now, that may be the one area that Chicago's not horribly bad. Andrew Billings and Justin Jones aren't bad. And then they have a couple of really really high draft picks, second rounder Dexter Sr. and third rounder Pickens are looking to get some playing time pretty quickly right off the bat. Detroit, this is the one area where I look at Detroit's team and I'm like, they really didn't do anything to help themselves here. John Kaminsky, Isaiah Buggs, and Aleem McNeil. Not exactly what you'd call your household names. So Detroit needs to be able to do what they need to do to shore up that part of the team, because I don't know if those three guys, as their three interior linemen, are as high up as the rest of the division. I look at Minnesota. Minnesota's got an old Green Bay Packer on there. Dean Lowry goes over after basically losing his job to Devontae Wyatt late in the season last year and becomes a Minnesota Viking. Kiris Tonga, their nose tackle, and then Harrison Phillips, that used to play for the Bills. Not bad. I still don't think that it's Kenny Clark, TJ Slaton, and Devontae Wyatt, especially if you throw Lucas Van Ness in there either. When I look at this division overall, after talking about all these position groups with you, it's difficult for me to pick any other defense than the Green Bay Packers defense as the best in this division. I think that when you add all the position groups up, I think that they are the best. I think that Minnesota, like you talked about, led by the old man Harrison Smith, and you still got Danielle Hunter rushing the passer. Jordan Hicks, probably their most talented linebacker. But they got some other nice pieces. I think they're probably second best in the division. I think the Detroit Lions are last in the division. I just do, as far as defense, because they might have one good player, but then you can't name anybody else in some of these position groups. I think that Gardner Johnson and Branch have a chance to do something good in that secondary, and they did pick up Mosley and Sutton. But when you look at their front seven, besides Aiden Hutchinson in their front seven, who can you name from Detroit? The rookie Campbell?
Yeah.
I mean, Aiden Hutchinson is a monster to deal with, but the next most talented guy in the front seven is probably the rookie linebacker, Jack Campbell. And then I would have the Bears just above them in third place.
CJ Gardner, yeah. But I mean, he is getting older.
So is that pretty much how you have it as well? Packers on top as far as defense goes? Okay.
Absolutely.
Getting down to the nitty-gritty here. Special teams, that's kind of weird because, kickers, like running backs, can fall off a cliff every year. You just don't know. I love Green Bay's kick return room. I think it is I think that it is excellent. Detroit's doesn't have a bad kick return room either. Khalif Raymond has been a really good kick returner for quite a few years now. Chicago usually has pretty good special teams. I think they'll probably have pretty good special teams again this year. Minnesota, I'm not thrilled with any of their guys. Greg Joseph is okay as a kicker. for Green Bay, it's going to be interesting to see. See, Anders Carlson, who Green Bay drafted in the 6th round, his brother is an amazing kicker for the Raiders. His brother can hit anything on the field.
Hoping that it just runs in the family.
Yeah. So I mean, Green Bay is hoping that Carlson had a pretty good career at Auburn, and he's got a much. And look, I think this pick for Green Bay is as much about field position as it is anything else. Because as well as I do from watching the Packers as long as you have, Mason Crosby is still very accurate, but he's reached the point in his career he can't get that ball into the end zone anymore. And if you're a Packers fan, you kind of get tired of the opposing offense always starting from the 35 or 40 yard line. So I think Anders Carlson's got a big leg. You're probably going to get quite a few more touchbacks than you did when Crosby was there. So they're going to be starting on their 25 or whatever it is, and they're not going to be 10, 15 yards away from midfield just starting out. So we're kind of to the point of this. Casey, who do you unless you got something that you want to add about the special teams of this group?
I didn't mind Minnesota's special teams. I do remember them in that game where Nixon had his coming out party. If I remember correctly, Minnesota ran the next kickoff back on us, almost returned.
No, you're absolutely right. Was that Brandon Powell or?
I can't remember. I was thinking it was KJ Osborne, but
it might have been KJ Osborne is one of their. Well, Powell, I think, is their punt returner. Osborne and Nwangu are their kick returners. So it probably was Powell. Okay, Casey. So who's the class of the division, or is there the class of the division, and everybody's just kind of jumbled up in the middle?
I would have to, and I hate saying it. I would have to say that everybody is chasing Minnesota.
Okay. All right.
I think as bad as their defense, well, I won't say it's bad. It's not as good as their offense, but their offense is probably the best one in the NFC North.
Yeah, and I think if Jordan Addison is what we think he is coming out of USC, Minnesota could have an absolutely lethal pass catching room.
Well, and I mean they still have Rager, even if he doesn't come on. So
yeah, there's going to be enough guys that whoever they play are going to have to defend them. They're 3, 4, 5 good pass catchers deep if you throw in the tight end room too. So that's I had and this is going to make me sound somewhat of a homer. I had Green Bay as my top team. I'm like Dan Orlovsky and Keyshawn Johnson and a couple other guys. I think that Jordan Love is going to be better than most people expect that he's going to be. Even if he is just the average of the 3 passers in that division, if he's the average of Justin Fields, Jared Goff, and Kirk Cousins, if he's the average of those 3, I think Green Bay.
Yeah, but see, you put Cousins in there, and that just raises that bar that much better. Let's take Cousins out, and let's say, okay, if he's just as good as Justin Fields and Jared Goff, then tell me that you really think Green Bay is a playoff team.
If Jordan Love is horrible, they're not a playoff team. I think they're going to be a different team, and I think Green Bay fans they're going to see something different because they're going to be running an offense that's much different than it was when Aaron was there. Because Jordan isn't Aaron. He's like I said, he's as we've talked before. When he got drafted, they weren't looking at him as Aaron Rodgers. They wanted him to be Marcus Mariota that could pass the ball. And we'll see if he can fulfill that for Matt LaFleur's offense. They're going to have to lean on their running game, and they've got an offensive line to do it. And if they can do that, and give Jordan Love some time in a play action setting, they've got the cats that can go down the field and stretch the field and get open. They've got some nice tight ends. They've got one of the fastest and biggest receivers in football in Watson. They've got a great route runner in Romeo Doubs. And like I said, they've got the best defense in the division, and it's not even close. So you look at all that, and look at the special teams as well. They probably have the best kick returner in the division.
But Nixon isn't taking every kick back to the house though, and we haven't. While he may have had a great college career, we've got an unknown commodity as a kicker. So, that scares me. Really, I guess. I mean, there's no guessing. It all comes down to. Jordan.
Absolutely, no argument. No argument there.
I just don't. I need to see him play some meaningful minutes in training camp.
Yep.
Even if it's against, two-hand touch defenses, I don't care. I just need to see somebody playing actual defense against our receivers, because as much as you want to bring up the Philly game, Philly was up, they were up big, and they were playing soft. That whole defense playing soft is what let Christian Watson get across on that slant, and when he caught it, 15 yards deep with his speed,
it was over.
That's house call.
It was over.
Right. Now, if you're playing man, is it still a touchdown? I think yes, because one of the best routes that Jefferson runs is that intermediate crossing route. Nobody can hang.
Killed Green Bay in their first meeting.
Absolutely. And like he'll get 3 yard separation.
Right.
And as soon as he does, he's got a chance to take it every time. And I think Christian Watson has that same capability.
But can Jordan Love if Jordan Love, well, I tell you what, so you have Minnesota, in the head of the division and everybody else chasing them. I've got Green Bay barely ahead of Minnesota. It's like by a sliver. I mean, if we're talking numbers, we're talking like, 0.1 and 0.2 is how close I have those two teams. With Green Bay just a sliver ahead of them. So I want you to finish this sentence for me. If Jordan Love plays smart football and connects with his receivers the way you were just talking, Green Bay will finish blank.
No worse than second.
Okay. All right, that's fair.
No worse than second.
I do have Detroit as my number 3 team in the division. I think that they've got some special pieces on the offensive side of the ball. They've got a really good pass rusher, and they've added some pieces to their secondary. But that really good pass rusher is pretty much the only guy you can name in their front 7, except for their rookie Jack Campbell at the inside linebacker position. And I think Rodriguez is going to beat out Anzalone for that other inside linebacker position. But their interior defensive linemen, I'm just not sold on them. And their secondary, they might have improved the talent level back there, but these are all new pieces who haven't played with each other before. Jair Alexander, Rasul Douglas, Eric Stokes, Darnell Savage, Keyshawn Nixon, how many years have they been playing with each other now? They all know each other's strengths and weaknesses. In Detroit, you got Sutton, and you got Mosley, and you got Branch, and you got Gardner Johnson. None of these guys were on the same team together last year, and that matters.
No.
Yes, it does. And then I think, you have the Bears kind of rounding it out. And I think the Bears are going to be improved, but I don't think that they're going to be improved enough to pass any of the other 3 teams in the division. Justin Fields, for whatever reason, there's a lot of people thinking he's going to blow up this year. And I don't know what's giving everybody that idea because, even when he did have time to throw last year, it wasn't exactly pretty. He was inaccurate. So, I mean, unless he's going to be a Michael Vick that now, who knows? Shane Steichen, who's now the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, was able to fix Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts can now pass the ball. He was a quarterback whisperer. If Justin Fields can get some of that type of coaching, and we'll talk more about this in our Packers podcast that we do later on this week, that you guys will hear on Tuesday. But I think that's one of the reasons why I have Jordan Love as high up as I do, even though I have him last in the division, but why I think he's going to be better than advertised is because Jordan Love is now being quarterback coached by his own quarterback whisperer, Tom Clements. You saw his footwork, his release, and everything looked so much more cleaned up this past year than it did in years past. Aaron Rodgers swears by Tom Clements. So I'm going to, before we sign off here, Casey, I'm going to give you 3 names. And I want you to tell me what you think they all have in common. Elvis Grbac, Cordell Stewart, and Tommy Maddox. You recognize all those names, right? Yep.
Yeah. Cordell Stewart and Tommy Maddox were both Pittsburgh Steelers. Elvis Grbac was a 49er.
And then a Kansas City Chief.
And then a Chief. I'm going to guess that it's all Clements, but
yeah, all three of them by no one's standards would be considered perennial Pro Bowl quarterbacks, at least not for their career. However, all 3 of them made the Pro Bowl with guess who as either Clements, their offensive coordinator or their quarterbacks coach.
That's interesting. I'll leave you with one
Sure.
tidbit. Going into the draft, when the Packers selected Jordan Love, everyone said, well, everyone being all the pundits, they all said Jordan Love has the best arm talent of all the quarterbacks available in that year's draft. So if we get that, if he's able to put all the pieces, and I will give him all the credit in the world for this offseason, the OTAs, mini camps, even right now, he's got the pass catchers and the running backs out in California practicing with him.
I saw that.
So homeboy is putting in the work. He is doing his homework, and I give him all the credit in the world. I just hope it translates into I now know how to beat a zero blitz.
Yeah, that was horrible against the Chiefs. But like we talked about, with Justin Fields. Justin Fields has gotten some nice pieces around him to where if he has another season like he did last year, it's Justin Fields. Because he's got, DJ Moore is a real wide receiver. Chase Claypool's a real wide receiver.
Oh, that's a number
Cole
one.
Kmet is a real tight end.
Yeah,
and they got some good pieces on their offensive line now. Jordan Love is, in my estimation, is in an even bigger pressure cooker because he's got better weapons. Christian Watson could be the next Justin Jefferson. Romeo Doubs, great route runner. Jaden Reed, hell of a slot receiver. They're all young. They've got 2 good young tight ends. They've got the best running back duo possibly in the NFL, not just the NFC North. They have a stellar offensive line that's deep. So what is Jordan Love missing? Well, besides,
it's got to be up here.
Exactly. He's got the tools. He's got the weapons. He's got the toys to play with. If Jordan Love doesn't succeed this year, he's got a great quarterbacks coach and an offensive-minded head coach. If Jordan Love doesn't start succeeding and showing at least some very good progress this year, then Green Bay needs to start looking at those 2 first-round draft picks that they have for next year and seeing if they can parlay them into Caleb Williams or Drake May.
Caleb Williams.
All right, everybody. Hey, thank you for joining us today. Casey and I had a great time talking to you guys about our thoughts on the NFC North. Next Tuesday, we'll have a couple of videos drop for you. We're probably going to be having that Packers video for all you Green Bay fans. For those of you who aren't Green Bay fans, I get it. Hit the like button, subscribe, comment on it anyway. We also are going to be talking about the AFC East next week, which will be the place where Green Bay's former quarterback has gone, and you want to talk about a division that is going to be ripe with competition. So that's going to be a great conversation. So everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Casey, great to see you, brother, and we will see you next week.